To all of you viewers watching us right now today on Westnile TV this beautiful Saturday. I hope you're having a nice one, and this is yet another episode of The Real Talk with me, Ayot, Lillian, every Saturdays from 8 to 10 p.m. You can catch us on Zuku and Star Times. We also stream live on Facebook and YouTube, where you can actually interact with us. You leave your comment, your opinions, so that we also it's an interactive session, because we care about what you say. And our topic for discussion today is an interesting one. I had already said it in our last episode of The Real Talk, but before that, congratulations to the newly crowned Miss and Mr. Mooney University, who were crowned today, and they also have the Freshers Ball. A lot has been happening. I know the saga of Sheba's phone being stolen and all that. Aroa people, but that is it. I hope you have sat back and you're catching this episode. Like I said, today we'll be discussing a special topic, that is we are discussing sickle cell disease, because this is the month that is dedicated to creating awareness about this disease we are talking about. You know that every 19th of June or June, yes, we celebrate the sickle cell day. It's a day dedicated to celebrating this disease, creating awareness, giving support to these people. So a whole month, that is the month of September, is actually given to creating awareness about this disease, so that many people know about this disease, and also to see how we can support people affected, individuals and families affected by this disease, and how we can support them emotionally and psychologically. A lot of people have this genetic disorder in their family and they are not aware. Many people don't bother, you know, checking or knowing their sickle cell status, and those who know, some of them who know, still don't want to talk about it, because it comes with a lot of discrimination and stigma. But today we are going to create awareness. We want to talk about this disease. We are going to understand this disease, what it is, how it spread, the signs and symptoms, the complications that the individuals with this disease have, and whether this disease is a death sentence like most people say. Of course, a lot of myths are attached with this. Some people say people with sickle cell disease don't usually make it be, you know, above the age of 21. Some say 15 and all that. Some say it can be transmitted through blood, but we shall get that all clear today in today's episode. So if you have not, I know you already have questions. Yes, go to our YouTube channel to leave whatever questions or comment you have about this. And today in the studio we are joined by medical personnel from one of the laboratories here in Aroa, that is Lancet Laboratories. They are going to be with us here to talk extensively about this disease, sickle cell disease, and answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much for joining us today in the studio. Let's have you say hi to our viewer today before we kick into our topic for discussion. You're most welcome, starting with the gentleman on my left.
Okay, thank you so much, our viewers today. I'm called Cosmas Totimarat, that is my name, and I work with Lancet Laboratories as a medical lab technician. We are so glad to be hosted here by Westnile TV to talk about this very important case. Most times there are so many people who are not informed. Actually, there's a mass of people who are not informed about this particular disease. But right now, we got this, and we are so much privileged that we are trying to at least reach out to the people and make sure that they get to know what sickle cell disease is, and some of the myths that surround it. Just like my colleague said, a lot of things surround sickle cell. So we want to clear this out to the viewers, and then also if this information maybe it can reach the people in the grassroots, we want to also see a way that if this information can be helpful to them, and also maybe try to change how they think about the disease itself, and also some other things that surround the disease. Okay. Briefly, that's what we'll be talking about.
Thank you so much for accepting our invite here on Westnile TV to agree to talk about this sickle cell disease. We appreciate you're most welcome to Westnile TV. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. My name is Solomon Akwech. I work with Lancet Laboratories. Cosmas is my colleague. We are a team from Lancet. We have been invited to come and share with you today a very interesting topic on sickle cell awareness. Yeah, we are going to interact with you. We are going to welcome questions about these diseases.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Solomon. Without wasting time, I would like to throw this question to you. Someone is already asking, what is sickle cell disease?
Thank you for the question. Sickle cell disease is, in simple terms, for a layman term in the grasp to understand, it's just a genetic disorder in someone's red blood cell. We know that there are major components of blood in the human body, red blood cells being one of them, and we know that its vital role is to transport oxygen in the human body. So a condition called sickle cell is basically when the red blood cell is like its shape, its normal shape is changed to a sickle. A sickle is just in layman terms a device that most people in the villages use for cutting, harvesting rice and cutting. Maybe I've seen people using it in the villages in cutting grasses for roofing these local grass thatch houses in the villages. So that's the norm. That's the condition that this disease change the red blood cell to from normal shape to that sickle. So making it hard to transport the oxygen, and of course causing severe conditions like severe pain for a person having that condition, and also leading maybe to even severe organ failure.
Okay.
Basically that.
All right.
Just simple terms.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that detailed explanation. In case you're wondering what a sickle is that thing that is shaped like this, like a half moon for cutting grass.
Yes.
So that is how the crescent moon.
Yeah.
That is actually how it looks, and that is what he has been explaining. Turning to Cosmos, we know some people, they say some people have sickle cell, others have something, but it is not active. So like in a family, you have a sickler and some of you don't have. So make us understand the difference between someone who has a sickle cell disease and someone who has that trait.
Thank you so much. Like my colleague explained, like sickle cell as a disease, like from his definition, it is a disease that affects the normal shape of the red blood cells. But one thing we need to look at as we draw to this conclusion of maybe a sickle cell disease and a sickle cell trait is for us to understand how this happens and how this comes to affect one, and maybe the other one is a carrier and maybe a trait as we term them. So sickle cell is an hereditary disease. That means it is carried on our genes. It is carried on our genes and transmitted by a form in which you find out that a parent gives one gene, one allele to a child, and then each parent, a mother gives one, and then a father also gives one. So you find that in most cases, if this parent, maybe one of the parents is maybe a non-sickler, for example, this parent gives in as an allele which is having sickle cell on it. So what does this mean? This means if the other parent maybe is normal, for example, this person ends up being a trait, as you can say. So there is a clear difference between a sickle cell disease and a sickle cell trait that we need to understand clearly. And the sickle cell trait is not actually a diseased person, and this person doesn't present with all the signs and symptoms that a person with sickle cell disease presents with. And so these are the things we need to understand so clearly. So from the spread, we also need to know what comes after that. So when we know how it is spread, it also helps us to know which steps to take in life and how to also help others. Normal shapes and the abnormal shape of the red blood cell. The normal shape of the red blood cell gives us that whole disc shape, which is having the hemoglobin in the middle. But the other one, which is sickled, like my colleague explained, the sickled shape is almost like a crescent shape, which is like a new moon. Someone can easily understand that. Looks like a new moon just coming out. So we can see, as we see there, the dotted ones are the hemoglobin molecules, which are found in the red blood cells. And so those hemoglobin molecules, they occur freely. They are supposed to occur freely in the red blood cells. Ideally, you can see the differences in the two diagrams. In the two pictures, the one on the left shows us the red blood cell with hemoglobin surrounding all the red blood cells, and then the other one has red blood cells which are, the hemoglobin are almost clamped together, as you can see. These hemoglobins are clamped together, and that clamping of hemoglobin together also has an impact and effect onto someone who is a sickler. So basically, when we go deeper into this, the hemoglobins that you see are clamped together in a sickled red blood cell. Those ones are the ones that later on account for the pains that we have. That is what we call the vascular occlusion, is what you see there. When those red blood cells, the hemoglobins are in that shape, and then the red blood cells are sickled like that, what you later realize is that these red blood cells, instead of freely moving through the blood vessels, they end up being trapped into the blood vessels. And so that ends up causing what is called a condition called vascular occlusion. So it is basically the crescent red blood cells getting trapped into the blood vessels and forming like a chain. And that doesn't allow them to move freely. And it blocks a lot of actions that need to take place in the body physiology become deteriorated. And most times you find these people end up with serious pains, joint pains and other chest pains. You always hear them complain of that.
Okay.
So basically what you saw is the difference between a normal red blood cell and a sickled cell. And so we have to know that there is a disease and then a trait of this particular condition. The trait is the one who carries the gene, but that person is not a complete sickler, and this person does not express or show all the signs and symptoms of sickle cell. But the one who is a sickle cell diseased person, this person ends up carrying up, actually having all the signs and symptoms of sickle cell disease.
Okay, thank you so much, Cosmas, for that detailed explanation, and thank you, our producer Aldo, for the illustration. I believe our viewer out there is understanding this disease and how one becomes to be a sickler and all that. So I want to turn to Solomon. How can you tell that someone is a sickler or someone has this sickle cell disease?
Thank you very much for that question. In other words, what you're meaning is signs and symptoms of someone with this deadly disease. Of course, a lot of studies have put most signs and symptoms of this sickle cell that anyone can identify. But in case you cannot, like someone in the village cannot identify, of course there is that pain. When you go to the doctor will be able to identify. You can see the yellowing of the eyes. That's what they call jaundice, because the red cells are dying. Okay. So the yellowing of the eyes, and also swelling of some body parts, like he said, joint pain. So if those crescent shaped cells are clamped together, they block the vessel, and automatically when the vessels are blocked, you will see the swellings around certain body parts like the joints. And then also the symptoms can also be organ failure. Organ failure like the kidney. Once those blood supplies occur, because blood is not flowing normally, it's like the way it's supposed to flow in the body. So these vessels that supplies the organs, the organs will be deprived of blood, then automatically they will lead to the organ failure, and most especially the kidney that suffers the most. And you know the role of the kidney is supposed to withdraw all the toxins or the chemicals in the body together, then you put it out through urine. So once the kidney is not working, then of course you will see also body swelling.
Okay.
Yes. So that's one of the symptoms. Then I've talked about the yellow eyes, then there's organ failure. Those are basically the key ones that are available. But though there are also some that my colleagues maybe will also talk about.
Okay, I know there are still signs and symptoms that
but there are basically many.
Yeah, there are very many. Of course, we're coming back to it. For now, we are going for a short break. If you have just joined, we are talking about sickle cell disease and specifically looking at the myth and facts surrounding this disease. Thank you for staying with us. We're going to be back after this short break. Director Ayot, thank you, and our producer and everyone who is catching, don't go away. We're going to be back. Thank you.
Westnile TV, lighting up the region.
A brand new Global Star TV with StarTimes Inside Technology. New TV innovation with an inbuilt decoder that connects you to both StarTimes antenna and satellite signal. With StarTimes Inside Global Star TV, you can enjoy over 300 local and international channels, 1 month StarTimes highest bouquet for free, automatic system update, more benefits, more affordable. StarTimes Inside Global Star TV is available in all StarTimes branches and dealers countrywide. StarTimes Inside, entertainment inbuilt.
Westnile TV, lighting up the region.
Welcome back from that short break. Thank you for joining us on this episode. I should say a very special episode of sickle cell disease. And if you're wondering why we are discussing sickle cell disease, it's because this month, September, is a beautiful month that is dedicated to creating awareness about sickle cell. So helping us understand the disease, avail information to people, and see how we can support individuals and families suffering from this disease. Because not much attention has been paid to this disease, but it's affecting a lot of people out there. So it's only a good thing that you do yourself justice, know your sickle cell status. And if you want more information, there are a lot of places that you can get information about sickle cell online. from the hospitals, from the clinics, and everywhere there's information. You just have to look for it and it gets you. And there are also individuals who are going like this. We're also spreading awareness about the disease. And let's not forget 19th June is a day dedicated to also celebrating sickle cell disease. Well, there are a lot of challenges that these people go through, and we are going to explore this here on this talk show today with our guests from Lancet Laboratories, who have joined us to look into the issue of sickle cell disease. If you have just joined us, we had talked about what this disease is. Our producer helped us illustrate it on the screen to understand this, and also Cosmas here helped us explain what this disease is, and I hope we have gotten a bit of understanding. So now we want to look at you know, people talk about traits of sickle cell disease. A lot of things are said about disease, but we see this, there's also sickle cell anemia. I don't know if all patients with the sickle cell disease have the anemia, or it's just a sect of them who have it. So Cosmas, help us understand that.
Well, thank you so much. When you talk about sickle cell anemia, definitely, that one describes a condition. Anemia is a condition whereby you find that the red blood cells, or the hemoglobin in the human body, reduces below the normal limits. So in most cases, you find that people with sickle cell get what we call sickle cell anemia. We have different types of anemia that is caused by other conditions as well, but also sickle cell brings in an aspect of a condition that we call sickle cell anemia. Now, sickle cell anemia is caused due to the destruction of these red blood cells, basically coming because the red blood cells are not normal in shape. So since they are not normal in shape, for them to carry hemoglobin, which is the major component that carries oxygen, you find that crescent shape doesn't allow them to carry like enough hemoglobin. So you find that most of the hemoglobins are not really enough for the body. So when this is reduced, and that is now what leads to what is called sickle cell anemia. So that condition is only in people who have sickle cell, and that describes why it is called sickle cell anemia. So you find that most times for it occurs in stages as well, because you can find the anemia is chronic most cases, and because it is very hard for you to find someone who is having sickle cell having a normal hemoglobin level, what we call HB level. Most times you find they have HB ranging between 6 to 9 grams per deciliter, and that is low. That is naturally low. So in most cases, when now it drops below 6, which is the lower limit. So when it drops below 6, it creates in an alarm, and most times these people end up in some cases whereby they are transfused and all that, and that really describes what sickle cell anemia is. It is that reduction in the number of hemoglobin due to the crescent shape of the red blood cells, which allows them not to carry enough hemoglobin for the body for use.
Okay, thank you so much, Cosmas. Turning to Solomon, how common is this disease among people?
Yeah, basically that is based on statistics and the recent studies done in 2014 to 2017. They basically say 13.5% of the population of Uganda are carriers. And then annually, let's say each and every year, 20,000 babies are born with this sickle cell disease. So that's according to statistics or latest research that was carried out in Uganda. So 13.5% of the population are carriers.
Wow.
They carry the gene in their blood.
Okay, 13% of the population in Uganda are carriers. So yeah, those are people who actually know their status, and most people in Uganda don't even know their sickle cell status. So the statistics could actually be much higher than that. So this calls upon each and every one of us to go and test. Turning to Cosmas, at what age can this disease be diagnosed, and how is it diagnosed?
Thank you. Diagnosis of sickle cell disease starts from birth. the moment a child is born, at that point, you can take an initiative of making sure that you know the status of your child, whether the child is a carrier or this child is having sickle cell disease. But then, since there is no much sensitization, you find that most cases, people realize and notice that they have sickle cell when the signs and the symptoms set in. And so in most cases, you find in the hospitals when now these kids are in the wards, that is when the doctors now get in to request some of these tests, and this is how most of the people get to know that there is something called sickle cell that really exists. But ideally, for proper sensitization, if this is to be done and to help the people to reduce this, we are really supposed to make sure that this is done at birth. Like a child is born, if you have money, you go ahead and do a diagnosis, or you go ahead and carry out a test which can make you know whether this child has sickle cell or this child is a trait for sickle cell. And that is very helpful for all of us.
Speaking of, you said something like if you have money, how expensive is this test? How much does a sickle cell test cost?
Yeah, a sickle cell test, okay, we have a variety of tests. We have the screening tests, and we also have those confirmatory tests. Most times people rush to do the screening tests, and yet the screening tests, which is a slide test, it doesn't help you so much. It might help you know that you have sickle cell, but for trait cases, people who are traits, it is very hard for you to know that you are a trait if you just do a rapid test or this test that takes you a short while. It is common, everyone, almost all the labs around can do it when they have all the necessities. But then there is a particular test that you can carry out that can confirm whether you have the sickle cell or you are just a trait of sickle cell, or you have the what? You have one gene of sickle cell in you. So this test is what we call HB electrophoresis or hemoglobin electrophoresis. The test is from where I work, we carry out the test at 68,000. I don't know other places, but I really believe that this test costs less than 70,000. But also when we look at the economic status of most of our people, we find out that some of these people who come from the villages deep down there, they might be having the money, but they look at this as a burden. And yet the burden of the disease is bigger than the amount of the money that they're going to pay to clear out this doubt from their minds. So in one way or the other, I would say picking that money out and carrying out this test is actually more important than you sitting over it and taking this without knowing the status of the kid, and then you go ahead and you realize later on that the kid is having sickle cell when it is at a point that now at some point you cannot help it so much. So the test is not all that expensive when we devote ourselves to it and we see that we want to maybe kick this out. We want to drive this out of the community. We really need to push and make sure that we carry out these tests for a better confirmation of whether we have the disease or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So a test for the test costs are between 68,000 to I don't know, but in the laboratory at Lancet Laboratories it is 68,000. Like you said, for someone at the grassroots level deep down in the village, that is a very expensive test. I don't know if they do it at the referral. The last time I checked, they don't do it at the main hospital, at a rural referral hospital. So we are calling upon the government if they can make the tests compulsory at the hospital, and then that will do in reducing this disease.
Actually, maybe to add on to this point of sickle cell screening, in most developed countries, sickle cell screening can start from even when the child is not yet born. That is called chorionic villus screening. That's you remove the sample from where the baby is, from the placenta, the chorionic fluid. Then you go and do the screening. That is what they call prenatal. Then there's also postnatal, where they do it at birth, where when the baby is just born, they do that. Those are just screening. Then they confirm to a test he has talked about, that HB electrophoresis that we do at Lancet.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. You know, this disease comes with a lot of things, just like HIV when it first surfaced, a lot of myth, stigma and discrimination surrounding it. And there's this specific thing with sickle cell disease where people believe people with sickle cell disease have a very short lifespan. You know, they say someone cannot make it beyond the age of 15 maybe. Some people say, you know, when you reach 15, you start experiencing less crisis. These things leave you like you start living a normal life. And some people say these sickle cell survivors or warriors do not actually, they can't do something meaningful in your life. So most of them lose hope. So how true is some of these statements?
Yeah, of course, in a community, those each and everything that comes will always have the negativities and the positivities. So for sickle cell, there are actually very many myths surrounding sickle cell. There are people who believe that sickle cell is basically carried by women. It's only women that maybe have those traits in their body, but that is actually wrong. I want to condemn it. Anyone can carry the gene in their body or in their red blood cell. You can only know your status by going for test. So in other words, I'm saying before couples who want to commit themselves into marriage, it's actually a very vital thing to consider before you commit yourself into marriage, because we are thinking about the baby or the child you're going to produce in the future. Of course, the child will have the pain. For you, the parents, since you are just carriers, you will not bear it, but you also bear the pain directly because of the pain of constant taking the child to the hospital. And more so in a community where they say women are the people who carry this gene or this sickle cell gene in their blood. I heard about that in West Africa, but I know it's also here in Uganda. There are some communities around Uganda here where statistics show that some people still believe it's only women who carry this disease, but that is very wrong. I can assure you, even men, unless you have taken the test, that's when you will not know that you have the gene in your blood. So you can only confirm it by having the test with your partner to know your status, whether you are a carrier or you also have sickle cell in your blood.
Okay.
Then another myth may be in some basically schools, kids with sickle cell, basically these normal ones tends to look down to them there, and they are bullied. Some of them are bullied. They make fun of those kids. They believe that these kids are basically weak, they can't do anything. But I want to assure the population that sickle cell or people with sickle cell or kids with sickle cell, they're just human beings, like just other human beings that can contribute to the society, for the betterment of society. So they also have knowledge, they can reason, they can do things that even a normal human being can do. So I want to condemn this basically in schools, that let's stop this thing of bullying people with sickle cell. Let's look, in fact, let's support them psychologically. Let's be close to them. Let's not, abandon them, and because they have sickle cell, so you're supposed to abandon them and maybe leave them to stay on their own. And in other words, most people think sickle cell is contagious, but that is very wrong. Sickle cell is not contagious. Sickle cell, like my colleague explained, is basically a child is born with sickle cell when both parents are carrying the gene in their blood. So that means the gene from the father and the gene from the mother will combine in the DNA fertilization, and that gene will be passed to the child, and automatically that child will be born with sickle cell. But there are also probabilities, there are chances in terms of percentages. Let's say if a father or a man with carrying the gene of sickle cell get married to a woman also carrying the gene of sickle cell, there is 25% of producing a child with sickle cell, who has sickle cell, then also 25% of producing a normal child. So there is also that probability of producing a normal a normal child. If these parents, like this one having genes of sickle cell, get married together, there is that probability of 25% producing a child that is normal. Then the remaining 50%, those are the children that will have the gene in their blood.
Okay, thank you so much for elaborately explaining that, because I was not putting some things together, you know. A man whose family is known as, they have sickle cell in their family, but then the woman's family has no sickle cell, and now they have a child who has the sickle cell disease. I might say sickle cell warriors, sicklers, and the survivors are the strongest people you can tell, because this disease is very, very, very painful. They persevere a lot of pain. They go through a lot of pain, and I want to in a very special way talk to Mungunge Florence. You are the strongest survivor I know, and you have been fighting, and you still are. You are a very good example to people with sickle cell disease. She is someone who is full of hope. I mean, she has overcome all the bullies, all the negative talks in the society and all that. I want to say your big sister loves you so very much. And still turning back to the myth and facts about sickle cell disease. You know, a lot of people, I don't know why the society attaches negative things to women. You know, the child has this disease and they say it's the woman. And most people tend to associate these things to witchcraft. And so that brings us to some of the signs and symptoms of sickle cell, though we had touched it, but we still want to look deeper into this. So we want to understand the signs. How can you tell someone has sickle cell disease? That they should rush to the hospital, not to the witch doctor or a traditional healer?
Thank you so much. Clearing that myth about sickle cell relating to witchcraft, that is coming from knowledge not being there. So when these people do not have a clear knowledge of where sickle cell comes from, they end up concluding that this is something related to witchcraft. Not until they try all the kind of ways through witchcraft to combat this situation and they fail, that's when they come back and now realize there is a need to consult a medical personnel or medical doctors, and or rush to hospitals and find solutions. When we try to talk about signs and symptoms of sickle cells, you know, when you go medically and you're trying to talk about signs and symptoms, you'll find out that so many signs and symptoms relate. So you find so many diseases almost sharing the same signs and symptoms. But when we talk about sickle cell, there are some clear signs and symptoms that you may have or you might see in these children. Since this infection or this disease comes in and causes this problem with the joints and all that due to the vascular occlusion. So you find that there are scenarios of joint swellings. So most of these kids, you find that they have swellings at the joints. And then some of them you find they will always have that serious pain. And most times people tend to drive that pain and also penalize these people for being drug abusers. And because they undergo through a lot of pain, and such pains are not easily relieved by these simple painkillers, and you find that most of the people who have sickle cell resort to taking what we call opioids. Those opioids are drugs that are made up of opium. You should understand that medicine basically comes from a lot of things within. So we can still use opium, which is taken as a negative thing in the society, but medically when put together, it gives us some particular medicine. So there are medicines that are made up of opium, which are called opioids. So these medicines are the ones that are the strongest. They are the strongest painkillers. They are the ones that are the stronger ones. So you find that most of these people who have sickle cell...
Before you go further, what are those medicines?
Okay, like we have medicines like tramadol. These medicines can be abused by so many people because they are strong, and then also their action on the body is not like the other medicines, like maybe the diclofenacs and maybe the paracetamols. Those ones cannot relieve such pains that come due to sickle cell because the pains are so severe. So most times you find people don't understand always the pain that a particular person goes through. So they run to conclude that you're abusing the medicine, and yet you yourself feels the pain that you're going through. But then we want to clear out this from the community, that sickle cell disease is not something that needs witchcraft for you to clear it off. That is a very big negative myth that we need to actually rule out when we are talking about sickle cell. Sickle cell disease is a hereditary, meaning it runs along the line of your generation. So if your generation has that gene, possibly you will carry that along. So how do you come out of that generation? It is all because actually it is just in a way that you should make sure that before you get into marriage, just like my colleague said, you have to make sure that you run and then make sure you do tests with your partner so that you know who is a carrier and who is a sickler. When you find out both of you are carriers, I'm sorry to say this, but I think you'll have to see off the relationship. Or if you're a believer, you can also go ahead and pray, but we don't want to conclude that that helps. It helps, yes, but people have different levels of faith. So we can't bring that here when we are talking about something medical. But then when you find out both of you are carriers, you should know that the percentage of you having these children that are having sickle cell disease is high, because all of you are going to contribute one allele each to a child, and this results into now the sickle cell disease. And also you will also have children who are also carriers, but then it is not bad for one partner being a carrier and the other one is normal. That one has no problem. You'll find that these people will only produce children who carry the sickle cell traits but are not sickle cell diseased. So they will carry the traits but they are not sickle cell diseased, just because one parent is completely normal, has no trait on the genes. So talking about sickle cell being maybe emanating from witchcraft is not true. People deep down in the village, if they can view us, or if they are viewing us right now, you should really know that sickle cell does not need an intervention which comes from witchcraft. When you realize that your child has some of these symptoms, that most of the times your child is in the hospital undergoing transfusion and you have not found out the source and the cause of the anemia, it is high time that you ran in and found out what is the cause of the anemia. Just like I said, there are so many types of anemia. That might also be an anemia that is resulting from sickle cell, what we call sickle cell anemia. So when you run to the hospital, you can find that they can help you carry out these tests, and then you end up concluding whether your child has sickle cell or not. But then also, unfortunately, I also want to air this out. It is very hard to find in most of our government hospitals to find that these tests are carried out. Most of the tests that are carried out in the government hospitals are the rapid test or the slide test that I was talking about. But then the confirmatory test, what I termed as HB electrophoresis, are not found in the government hospitals. Unless maybe if you go to places like Mulago, which are specialized, and I think at some point you may have to pay for these tests.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that elaborate information. We're going in for a short break, but when we come back, we'll still come more with the information on sickle cell disease. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. See you after this short break.
Westnile TV, lighting up the region.
A brand new Global Star TV with StarTimes Inside Technology. New TV innovation with an inbuilt decoder that connects you to both StarTimes antenna and satellite signal. With StarTimes Inside Global Star TV, you can enjoy over 300 local and international channels, 1 month StarTimes highest bouquet for free, automatic system update, more benefits, more affordable. StarTimes Inside Global Star TV is available in all StarTimes branches and dealers countrywide. StarTimes Inside, entertainment inbuilt.
Westnile TV, lighting up the region.
Welcome back from that break. This is the Real Talk with me, Ayot, Lillian, every Saturdays from 8 to 10 p.m. And this is Westnile TV. We are on Zuku, Star Times, and we're streaming live on our Facebook and our YouTube channel. So to be a part of this discussion, do leave us your comments or your opinion on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us for today's topic. We are looking at sickle cell disease, looking at the myth and facts surrounding this disease. The fact is that there is not much information about this disease. Not so many people know about its existence or see the need to actually know their sickle cell status. But this is a serious genetic disorder, as already discussed by our guests in our first segment, and there's need for you to know your status so that you, our children, are not affected. We have looked at what the disease is, how one can get it, the myth and all that surrounding this disease, and signs and symptoms, how you can tell someone has this disease and how it is diagnosed, how much it costs, and where you can do these tests to see whether you have the sickle cell trait or the disease. Thank you so much for staying with us up to this time, and we have guests in from Lancet Laboratories. Thank you, Aldo, our producer, and Ayot, our director. Thank you so much, and everyone catching us here. And this month we are celebrating, we are creating awareness about sickle cell disease and sending love to all the sickle cell survivors and the caregivers outside there. And I continue to say Mungu Florence and all other sicklers, we love you, and we still want to see that you lead a normal life in this lifetime. I want to start with a question that is coming in from Opio Daniel, who says, who is a sickle cell carrier? We'll have a Cosmas answer that question.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Daniel rather. Sorry for that. Thank you, Daniel, for the question. I understand you've been using sickle cell carrier and the sickle cell trait concurrently, but both mean the same thing. A sickle cell carrier and a sickle cell trait are all the same. A sickle cell carrier is someone, in layman's tongue, I may say, someone who is partly a sickler or carries a gene, an allele for sickle cell. So this person, when you have two carriers, if I'm to explain this very well, if you have two carriers, they lead you to maybe a sickle celled person. Like if you combine, if the union between these two come together, they give birth to at least some kids who are also sickle celled. So a sickle cell carrier now, if I'm to define it well, is someone who is having a trait of sickle cell. There is what we call the homozygous state and the heterozygous. So the homozygous state is someone who is having completely all the two genes, all the two alleles on the chromosomes are having the what? The sickle cell traits. But then the one who is a carrier has only one, meaning this person only carries one from one parent. For example, one parent is normal and one parent is a carrier. So this person only carries one trait from the parent, and then the other one from the other parent is normal. And this person presents normally with life, doesn't have signs and symptoms of sickle cell, and does not suffer from any complication of sickle cell. Actually, this person looks normal. There is nothing that you can do even to identify that this person has sickle cell. Unless you go for a test, that is when you know that you are a carrier. If you don't go for a test, you live your life happily and even die knowing you don't have anything like that. So the importance of going for the test is for you to make sure that you don't come in union with also someone who is of the same status as you, so that you give birth to kids who are sickle celled, and at the end you find that it gives you that kind of situation where you have to deal with children who are having sickle cell, and that is the advantage actually. As when you know you are a carrier, you have to actually go ahead, or you know that your family carries that gene of sickle cell, you go ahead and carry out a test, even if you look normal.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you so much. Like he has put it, you may think that you are normal, yet you are carrying the trait. Well, I look normal, I may be carrying the trait, but that is the truth about sickle cell disease. So he has given you a reason as to why you need to go test and know your sickle cell status, because you think you're normal, yet you have the what? You have the trait, and then your partner may also have the trait, and you end up having a kid who has this, the disease. So it's important for you to know your sickle cell status so that we avoid some of these things. These things can be avoidable, by the way, and that just take your partner as you're going for HIV test. I know most of you focus on the facility test, and then knowing your HIV status. A sickle cell disease test should be a must amongst some of your tests that you're going to do. Thank you so much, Cosmas, for that. Turning to Solomon, we want to look at some of the complications that come with this disease.
Yeah, thank you. The complications, we already mentioned the organ failures, and the most organs that suffers from this disease is the liver, is one of them, and then basically the kidney that we already discussed earlier on. Those are the complications that they undergo as severe organ failure.
Okay, why
Yes.
do these complications come? Is it because of maybe the kind of medication that they have, or something else?
Not really, like I already put earlier on, when these crescent-shaped cells are many in the blood, of course they don't flow normally like our red blood cells flow. We know that the normal red cell is flexible, can flow normally in the body, in the blood circulation. So this crescent shape, they don't flow normally. In other words, they get stuck in the vessels, blocking the flow of blood. The blood that is supposed to reach those organs, supply them nutrients, supply oxygen to make them active. Of course, they will be deprived of the normal blood flow, causing its failure.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the complications that these people face is the organ failure, the kidney and the liver as portrayed on the skin. And turning to Solomon, you can still continue with some of the complications, and we also want to look at what the life of a person living with a sickle cell, just a picture of how it looks.
Thank you so much. Let me pick up from where my colleague left concerning the complications. He mentioned the organ failures. We have some key organs that are affected by this. We have the liver, we have the kidney, we have the spleen. The spleen is a very vital organ in the body, especially when it comes to red blood cell issues and all that. The spleen is where red blood cell is destroyed. We all know some basic that I think we all know is red blood cells take 120 days in circulation. That is when it is normal. And then for a sickle-celled red blood cell, you find that it takes less than 120 days. And most times they take 10 to 20 days, and on average maybe 17 days. And so this alone puts the spleen on heavy work, like serious work. So instead of destroying red blood cells in 120 days, it is doing this work in 10 to 20 days, 10 to 20 days. Meaning every time red blood cell is supposed to be made and red blood cell is supposed to be destroyed. And all these things that are destroyed are supposed to be eliminated from the body through the kidney. And this explains why we always have what? The kidney failure as one of the complications of sickle cell disease in people who have sickle cell. Because as the spleen is destroying the sickle cell red blood cells, they are supposed to pass through the kidney for them to be eliminated out of the body. And so there is heavy work on the spleen. And we know the source or where red blood cells come from. Red blood cells are made from the bone marrows. And so you find that is why you find that bone marrow transplant is the only cure for sickle cell disease. But then I know researchers are coming up, and we're probably going to have other ways of treating this. I pray, because the scientists, I know they keep working hard every day. And looking at the life of a sickle cell diseased person or someone who is having sickle cell, In some occasions, I've also come across people who are also battling with sickle cell. I've moved to a hospital, I've gone to the pediatric ward and seen some children who are battling with this disease. Around last year, I was able to also see one who was diagnosed late, and this kid ended up dying. And I was imagining the pain that the mother had, because this kid was diagnosed late for sickle cell. So this also makes me kind of attribute this to what the parents are also going through, like the relatives, the parents to the kids, because these children, most of the time, they don't tell you what they go through. They don't explain. They will not tell you how severe the pain is to them. But then also to the people, to some of them who have grown to some age, who have at least fought hard, and they are at some age maybe above 10, and they are also still battling with that. It is always manifest that you see whatever they are going through is always very painful, especially when they are rushed into the hospital in acute cases, whereby you find most of the time such people are always deprived of oxygen also. So that is why most times you see when such things happen or something happens, and then someone who is having sickle cell is rushed into the hospital, sometimes you find oxygen is put, you find blood is put. So you try to imagine all the pain they have to be going through almost. You find that some of them who don't take some serious precautions, you find that sometimes twice a month they're in the hospital, sometimes some of them even weekly are in the hospital. So all the pain they go through in the names of treatment or finding some help is really enough. It is a lot on them and also on the parents. And also financially, this thing is too much on parents. And that is why we come out to say that you should do this test, so that the pain should at least come when it has already happened, before you had known what you can do to make sure that you don't fall a prey into this. But if you're already one of the people who are fighting this, or you're having a family member who is fighting and struggling and battling with this disease, it is really painful. That is one thing I know financially. And also, we also have stigma attributed to this. There is a lot of stigma that people with sickle cell disease face. So many times people believe they cannot do something in life. That's why most times you find when parents notice they have children who are having sickle cell, some of them even resent from sending them to school, because they know that this kid will reach at some age and die off. People have that myth that children or people who have sickle cell disease do not reach above 15 years. Some of them do not reach 20 years. I can support that with a point, but it doesn't mean that at this point now, these kids do not reach 20. The reason as to why in the early years people were not reaching 20 years or 15 years was just because there were no proper medications that were in place to take care of this situation. So right now, there are medicines in place that help to prolong the life of people who have sickle cell disease. So it is not right to conclude right now that people who have sickle cell disease do not hit 15 years and above. They can go as long as that. We already know that there are so many drugs that are in place that help to prolong their lifespan, and also those who have money can also go ahead and do bone marrow transplant. That is the only cure we have for sickle cell disease. So we need to rule out the myth that people with sickle cell disease cannot do anything in life or something in life. And those who are in school, the only difficulty we also see is the school may also find it hard to also cope up with these people. Just like the parents also find it hard to deal with these people. So you may find that some schools, for some reasons, may find it hard to admit children who are having sickle cell. And I think that explains the reason as to why most schools give forms, medical forms for these children to fill and all that. But fortunately, I have not seen in those medical forms where they request for maybe a sickle cell disease test. That means they are open, their hands are open to welcome these children to school. But then also the difficulty that comes with dealing with these children while in school is also another big task that they will always face in life. But the people who are having sickle cell disease themselves, they face the biggest stigma compared to the parents and the other people around them.
Wow, he has vividly painted out the picture of the life of a person with sickle cell, and personally I can testify that it's a life of pain. These people go through a lot because you are constantly at the hospital, you are admitted, you have to be transfused, there's always that crisis, there's a lot of pain. These people live in a lot of pain, like you're constantly on painkillers, and sometimes the painkillers you take are not strong enough. It goes to an extent whereby someone even says, I just want to die. So that is how bad it is. And for the caregivers, it's a very difficult moment emotionally, because you're seeing someone cry in pain and there is nothing you can do. So that should only give you more reasons to go and test for sickle cell disease, and encourage everyone, your friends and families, to do the same thing, because the earlier it's diagnosed, the better for the patient and also the family members and everyone else. So that should be a very strong reason for you to want to know your status. And there's a question that at what age does the signs and symptoms of sickle cell start to show?
Basically, these signs and symptoms start appearing depending on from person to person, but basically start from 4 to 5 months or even to 6 months, depending on that particular person. That's when the signs and symptoms begin, depending on person. But basically from 4 to 6 months.
So it varies from person
yes,
to
from person to person, yes.
Maybe to elaborate more about that, we also should, I want to bring in an aspect of the types of the hemoglobins that we have.
Oh.
And that may also help us explain maybe at what age this can be of help. As a child is born, this child takes up or comes out with what we call the fetal hemoglobin. There is the hemoglobin F, which is the fetal hemoglobin, and then there is the hemoglobin A, which is the adult hemoglobin, and that is the one that is the normal one that we have. And then there is the S hemoglobin, which is the sickled one. So as a child is born, this child is born with more of the F hemoglobin, which is the fetal hemoglobin. But then as life goes on, this hemoglobin changes into an adult hemoglobin. And so you find that in a case whereby someone has an A and an S, or the transition of this F may either result into an A or an S, depending on what this child has picked up from the parents. In a scenario whereby you find this child has picked up an SS, or 2 sickle-celled alleles from each parent, you'll find that the F, or the fetal hemoglobin, changes to all SS. And that explains, when you go for a test, you'll always find it somehow difficult to interpret the results. But we have HbAA, which is the adult hemoglobin, the normal one. And then a carrier has HbAS, and someone who has sickle cell has HbSS. That is someone who has sickle cell. And so you find that when we attribute this to when the signs and symptoms can come in, most times you find that these children at infancy, it is very hard for you to notice this, just because the transition in the hemoglobin content from F to either A or S takes some time. So, but it is always easy for you to also notice that by the time a child is going to make 1 or 2 years, you are able to notice that there is a problem with this child, either how frequent the child falls sick, and also you may find that some of the body parts of the child doesn't grow normally. The bones are not forming normally, as we understand that it is in the bones whereby these red blood cells are made. So you find some of these kids grow up and they cannot walk. I'm quite sure you've ever seen some of these people who have sickle cell disease. They have a problem with walking. They are weak. Their joints are weak. And that is as a result of sickle cell. And you can notice that with time. And so that is basically what I can say about how fast you can know that someone has sickle cell. It can take 1 to 2 years from birth. From there you can notice someone has sickle cell. basing on a test. Don't forget that you have to always diagnose. We don't stand on signs and symptoms. We always make work easy by diagnosing, carrying out tests, and so that the doctor does his work properly.
Okay, so you have it from him that these signs and symptoms vary from person to person at what age they start showing. So some of these signs are actually similar to other diseases. So that means you should not have it in your head that it could be malaria, it could be HIV, it could be hepatitis, because you see the yellowing of the eyes, and there's a lot that the symptoms resemble. So the only way you can tell this person has sickle cell disease or any other disease is by going to the hospital so that it's medically diagnosed, and that is a very, very important point.
Lillian, I needed to add a point on one of the complications that also, as you said, with sickle cell is basically stroke, because once these vessels are blocked, blood will not flow normally to the brain and leading to stroke, and the body, either one part of the body will be paralyzed, the part that is affected will be paralyzed, or even the person will find it hard to speak. That is basically stroke.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what you said with sickle cell, when those vessels are blocked.
A lot of people have been attributing stroke to other medical conditions and all that. Now we even know that sickle cell can make someone have stroke. Once you notice the signs and symptoms, please be quick to take such a person to the hospital so that it's early diagnosed and maybe treatment or all that. Some of the question, the most common question people have been asking, and also some of the misinformation that people spread about sickle cell disease is that it can get cured, it can do what, and some people say it can't. So please help us clear whether this disease can be cured, and if not, what are the available treatments?
Yeah, sickle cell, like my colleague stated, the only way for now that we can cure sickle cell, according to scientists, is by bone marrow transplant. And it's quite expensive. Actually, it's being done in those developed countries, but a developing country like Uganda, I don't think anyone in grassroots or in the village can afford to do bone marrow transplant. So for now, what government has done in government hospitals, what the medications that they are giving these people with sickle cell is majorly to tackle the signs and symptoms, so that we prolong that person's life to live. So those medications, they don't cure. We are just basically targeting the symptoms that comes with sickle cell, or the complications like the joint pains, the stroke, and maybe body swellings. So those medications are just targeting the complications and symptoms and also signs. So they don't cure. So for now, the only cure that can get rid of sickle cell is bone marrow transplant, which is not even done here, I'm sure.
Okay, there you have it. For a person with sickle cell disease, there is hope. It can be cured through bone marrow transplant, but then it is very expensive and it's not done within Uganda. I don't know if it's done within Africa, but you should know that
maybe it is done. I don't know where it's done in Mulago, but maybe it's there, but maybe few people can actually do it or can actually afford it. Yeah.
Okay, people say it was going to be started in Uganda and all that. You'll help us clear that. So we know at least there's one cure, though they're still working on others. This treatment you talked about, you manage the symptoms and the rest of the things. We've seen some of these people being transfused. I don't know if everyone who has sickle cell disease is transfused. And there's also a saying around this that once you are transfused, like you get transfused for life. So every time you fall sick, you have to be transfused. How true is that?
Thank you. That is interesting. Transfusion, like I know, blood transfusion is where someone is given blood when the blood level is too low for the body. We want to clear out that doubt that when someone gets or starts getting transfused, this happens for the whole of the life to come now. But that is not true. there are conditions that blood transfusion is administered to a patient. Blood transfusion is actually a therapy as well. We have different types of therapies. We have chemotherapy, which is in terms of drugs, and then we also have blood transfusion, which is also a mode of therapy. So blood transfusion comes in at some point because we have certain targets which are supposed to be met before a patient is transfused. And one of them, the major target for a patient, or the major thing or point that the person has to meet to be transfused is always the hemoglobin level. There is the normal hemoglobin level, and then there is an aspect where the hemoglobin level is low. And this hemoglobin level can still be low and yet not require transfusion. But there is a point whereby it is too low and severe, and now it requires transfusion. So there you can't help by doing any other thing apart from doing a transfusion. So you find that hemoglobin level may be less than 4, sometimes less than 5 also. If a patient has a hemoglobin level less than 5, or a sickler is having an hemoglobin level less than 5, definitely this person will have to be transfused to save the life of this person. So we want to rule out the fact that this person will have to be transfused every time. But trust me, if this person is maintained at an HB level above 5 by maybe other supplements, there are other supplements that doctors give to make sure that the blood keeps on being manufactured each and every time. When these components are given and the patient is taking them constantly without skipping, without defaulting, you find that this person will not need transfusion each and every time, unless the blood level goes, or the hemoglobin level goes below 5 grams per deciliter. That is when we can talk about transfusion. But yes, still, if that remains like that always, you will still be transfused. But if you stay above that target, it doesn't mean you have to always be transfused. Okay. We can rule that out.
Thank you. That is very clear. You can only be transfused when your blood level is very low, and that is only after doing a CBC
Yes, you can
test
CBC.
something to know your blood level. That determines whether you can or cannot be transfused. And thank you. If you still have any questions burning there that you want to ask, or leave a comment, or maybe tell us about your own experience that you have with a sickle cell patient or anything, you can leave that on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page since we are streaming live, because your opinion matters, and this is supposed to be a discussion, and we value your thoughts and opinions. We are going for a short break, but when we come back, someone asks a question that does sickle cell have alternating conditions? We shall answer that question after this short break. Thank you so much for that question. We're going in for a short break. When we come back, we'll have answers to your question.
Westnile TV, lighting up the region.
A brand new Global Star TV with StarTimes Inside Technology. New TV innovation with an inbuilt decoder that connects you to both StarTimes antenna and satellite signal. With StarTimes Inside Global Star TV, you can enjoy over 300 local and international channels, 1 month StarTimes highest bouquet for free, automatic system update, more benefits, more affordable. StarTimes Inside Global Star TV is available in all StarTimes branches and dealers countrywide. StarTimes Inside, entertainment inbuilt.
Westnile TV, lighting up the region. Westnile TV, lighting up the region.
Thank you so much for staying with us and welcome from that short break. This is The Real Talk with me, Ayot Lillian, every Saturdays from 8 to 10 p.m. We are on Star Times and Zuku. And don't forget, we stream live on our Facebook and YouTube channel where you can leave us your comment or what you think about this topic for discussion. And in today in the studio, we have our guests from Lancet Laboratories. Arua, thank you for coming through, and also for you, thanks to you for watching this. And we are celebrating sickle cell survivors, sickle cell warriors, because this month is dedicated to, you know, creating awareness about this disease, and we want to make sure this information reaches out to people who do not know about this disease. Knowingly or unknowingly, you are being affected by this disease. You could have a relative, or the trait exists in your family, the gene that you do not know about. So you can only know that if you do a sickle cell test that our guests already talked about. It goes from between 68, I don't know, but that is the amount that at Lancet Laboratories the test is at 68,000. I don't know how it is from in other laboratories, and we're saying this test is expensive for people at the ground, the root level, but it is a necessary test. So it's a call. We are calling upon the government, if they can make this compulsory at the hospitals and provide these tests at the hospitals, then we can help fight this. And we acknowledge that these sickle cell survivors and their caregivers go through a lot, you know, in their lives. For example, the sicklers, they have this crisis that they experience from now and then, and it's a lot of pain for them to bear. And these caregivers go through a lot psychologically, so they need a lot of support from people. And we also say these survivors face challenges like discrimination. You know, they're bullied, they're given a lot of negative comments from people outside. We're just asking you to be a little bit kind to them, so that they help them live a normal life, feel like they're normal people. And also the myth that surrounds this thing, like these people can't survive and all that. We are saying that they can have a long lifespan, but only when this disease is detected early, and there's treatment available from we have medication, there's transfusion, there is a cure that is expensive. That the only challenge is that it's expensive and it is not yet available within. So that is what we have discussed in our previous episodes, and we looked at some of the signs and symptoms and the effects, the complications that come with this disease. We looked at a lot of things, and I believe you should share this to your friends and friends and friends, so that a lot of people get this information that is much needed. So now diving into this discussion, turning to Cosmos, people want to know, is this disease only inherited, or there are other ways that someone can get this disease?
Thank you so much, Lillian. Well, you know, when you're always talking about a disease, we also have to talk about transmission. And these are some of the things you need to always not forget when you're talking about a disease, from the spread, transmission, treatment, and all that. So when you talk about transmission of a sickle cell disease, always people have a lot of things in their mind concerning transmission, because most people relate transmission, one, since in the world that we are in right now. I want to clear out this, that transmission of sickle cell disease is not in any way except you carrying it from both of your parents. there is no way you're going to get sickle cell, maybe by touching someone, maybe, for example, let me say, it is not sexually transmitted, and it is not transmitted like malaria by maybe mosquitoes. It is basically transmitted when you carry these genes from your parents, and these are always shared from the two parents that you will have. That is the little I can say about transmission. It is not contagious, it is hereditary. That means it is always carried along your line, your generational line, meaning you can carry it from your father and mother, and that gives us a clear reason as to why when you're coming together in union as a family, you're supposed to go ahead and carry out this test, because this is the only way this disease can be transmitted from you to your children, and you are the only person who can stop this from happening. You as parents, upcoming parents, and also those ones who have maybe gone into marriage and maybe you still don't have children, it's still not too late for you to carry out this test, because this is the only way you're going to stop this from being transmitted. If at all both of you are carriers, or if at all maybe someone or one of you is a carrier. We may look at maybe one person being a carrier not being a bad scenario, but also I'm also looking at it in a way that two people who are carriers coming together, still you're passing out people who are carriers who might not end up getting the information and end up later on marrying people who are also carriers, and at the end they give us children who are having sickle cell. So if we are to fight this, the primary people we are getting to at the moment are the people who are getting into marriages. Most times when people are going into marriages, we rush to do some of the baseline tests, and yet we forget this HB electrophoresis test, which is one of the major tests that we can do among others, which are always cheap. People tend to forget. I think it is also because there is no sensitization. Even the people who look like they are learned, they still don't know that there is something like sickle cell. Not until maybe one of their relatives are affected by that. That is when they get to know that there is something like sickle cell.
Okay, now that you say it is inherited, it's a genetic disorder, is there a possibility of ending this maybe in the near future, because we say we can do tests, you can, avoid having these children who have sickle cell disease, and also can someone who is a carrier, when a person who is a carrier gets involved with someone who is clean of the sickle cell disease, can they have a child who is a carrier or maybe has the sickle cell disease?
Yeah, like I put it earlier on, that there are possibilities of, let's say, someone carrying the gene sickle cell coming into union with another person with a gene for sickle cell. I already said there's probability in terms of percentages, like 50% being carriers, that's children with gene of sickle cell, but not the actual sickle cell itself, but just carrying the trait, or they are carriers. Then there's 25% also producing a normal child. That is when this union come together. That's 25% of producing a normal child, and then also 25% of producing a child with sickle cell. Then also you say the carrier coming to union with a normal person, or someone with sickle coming to union with a normal person. Still there is that probability of producing carriers, normal and sicklers.
Okay.
Yes.
So that means.
So I think the only way we can, cut this off is we need, like, there's more awareness required in terms of sickle cell disease in the grassroots level, or at the grassroots level. I know government is doing a lot to curb this disease. Yeah, but a lot is still needed. I know there are also NGOs, I know for Malta International, that is in conjunction with some also other organizations to support these people of sickle cell, also creating awareness to the communities about sickle cell. So, like my colleague said, the moment you realize, when you, let's say you go for a test of this disease, like you do HB electrophoresis as partners, the good news is I think basically we have a genetical counselor available, I don't know whether they're really available at the referral hospital, but I know they are there, though not very many. They can really come to help these people and give them way forward in terms of marriage. I think basically that's what I can give regarding that.
Okay, before that we had a question where someone asked, does sickle cell have alternating conditions? As you answer that, we also want to point at the most challenging thing that these people with sickle cell face. What are those challenges that they face in their lives, and how best can we address these challenges? We have the question there. Does sickle cell disease have alternating conditions?
Sickle cell disease having an alternating condition or having alternating conditions, I can say this person is trying to maybe talk about sickle cell having alternating maybe signs and symptoms, to be specific. What I may say is every time a disease happens or occurs, it doesn't present with only one sign or symptom. And these signs and symptoms may not be similar at all times. By that I mean if today this kid presents with anemia or severe anemia, next time this child may not present with severe anemia. Next time it might be severe pain, chest pain or something like that. So that differentiates. I don't know whether that brings in, but the signs and symptoms do not always remain constant. It is not that every time these people have to present with all the signs and symptoms that we've talked about. Just like malaria doesn't always present with only headache, there is also fever. Sometimes fever is not there, but headache, you still go and test and you find yourself with malaria. So the same way, the conditions can still keep alternating. The signs and symptoms can still be alternating. And as you said, what can people with sickle cell do to cope up with life?
What's the biggest
challenge they have, rather, the biggest challenge they have in coping up with sickle cell disease? One of the biggest challenges I've seen in the years past, you see that these people have had a difficult time, especially just like people with HIV in the years back had a lot of stigma. You could just see people talk about someone with HIV and someone loses self-esteem. I think one of the challenges that these people face, these people tend to lose self-esteem so much, and it is not because they want, it is because people tend to throw that to them. And we know as human beings, most times we tend to judge so fast. So by someone having sickle cell, we end up concluding what best this person can do in life. And that is a big challenge as a human being. It is just like you're growing up and someone already tells you in your ears that you can't do something in life. You can feel that pain. Just like right now, maybe you realize you have maybe HIV and then someone comes and tells you you're going to die the next day. This is the same thing that these people go through, that challenge that they go through. Just that for them they have a sickle cell disease. So when someone tells them you have this, and then some of them also know, due to statistics, some of them have gone to school, some of these fighters and warriors of sickle cell, some of them are informed. So they go ahead and look for articles that tend to cite information about sickle cell. They will also find out that sickle cell is hard to cope up with, and those are some of the challenges they also face. And people believe that these people are always mentally retarded, which is not true. Sickle cell does not make someone mentally retarded or does not cause mental retardation, as people may think. But then when they speak it behind you, just because they think, or just because they take it like a myth, it affects you, of course, psychologically. So these people, instead of living life normally, most times they are battling with life, fighting the disease, as well as also fighting what people are saying. And that is a very difficult scenario. If there is anything difficult for someone to fight, it is the condition they are in, because they never wanted to be, that unwillingness. It came just because they didn't want to be in that condition. They just found themselves in that condition. And then also someone coming behind them and adding more information or negativity on the setback that they are facing. That is something very hard to always cope up with. And I think it is one of the biggest challenges we also see that the people who are having sickle cell disease undergo.
Okay. Yeah. Just like he has put it, you know, these people actually don't ask to have this disease, so they just like they find themselves they have it. It could be them, then the next thing tomorrow it could be your child or maybe any of your siblings. So that is how unpredictable it is. Unless you test and make sure that you don't have the trait or that disease, then you can be sure you are actually free. These people face a lot of challenge, in fact financial, emotional, psychological. So that's why it's we're calling upon people, like it's a collective effort that we show support to these people. You can be there for them emotionally, psychologically, financially, because also the treatment is sometimes it's not for free, especially when you don't go to a government facility, and a lot that comes with it. Turning to Solomon, what efforts are being put in place? What deliberate efforts are individuals, maybe the government, putting to see that there is increased awareness about this disease, and people get aware and more people get into the art of maybe testing for this disease?
Yeah, like I already mentioned, one NGO that I know, Maltasa International, they are basically working to support these people with sickle cell. I don't know whether also here in Westnile, but they are basically Western region and also some part of Central, that they are supporting these people with sickle cell. They are creating awareness even to other communities about sickle cell. And I believe also government has a program or a package for targeting sickle cell. Though I have been following the minister, I don't know whether that bill is signed, or because I understand that they were still going to discuss in the cabinet on targeting sickle cell. So I'm yet to get more elaborate information from that. But I believe also government is doing a lot in as far as sickle cell is concerned. But maybe what government could do also by bringing these early screening devices to the lower facilities, so that children are screened even at birth, so that we know their fates early, that we start treatment. Because when we give extensive care to these children, we can cut that myth of children dying before age of 15 or before age of 5. Yeah, we can really cut out that myth. That is, if government can extend that support to lower facilities, so that we start screening these children or these babies at birth. Yeah, basically.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you very much. Acknowledging the fact that this test is expensive for someone at some level who can't afford this test. Maybe they want to do the test, and then there's a call upon the government to bring these testing facilities closer to the people, maybe to the health facilities. And I don't know if they can make it compulsory for every baby to be screened, you know, when they're still young, so that we can tell whether they have the trait or the disease, and then access treatment at an early stage. Still turning to Cosmas, we want to see, I would ask you, is the government putting in enough effort? Or let's say the government or the different NGOs, are they putting enough effort to see that people get information about this disease? They're basically raising awareness, and if not enough is being done, what can you suggest that we could do to make sure we raise more awareness about this disease?
Thank you. I really want to first of all say thank you to the government of Uganda, because the government is doing a lot single-handedly without maybe other stakeholders coming in. The government does a lot on themselves or by themselves. As of now, we know that concerning sickle cell, there are still some limitations that we hold at hand right now that might not be so much of help to see that this situation is maybe combated in the near future. Just like maybe for HIV, we've seen they have put a target of making sure that by 2050 we are living in an HIV-free world. But relating that to sickle cell, this is a disease that has not started today. It started a long time ago. Only that at some point people also had this myth that this disease is only and only in black people. I think that has also affected us somehow. And also we know, as our economic status stands, as black people, we do not have enough resources. First of all, when you look at our health facilities, hospitals, and also health centers, some of these tests are very specialized. Before you talk about these tests, the primary thing I put in place, or I can suggest, before you go out and tell people that you need to screen for sickle cell, and yet they don't have funds or money to come and carry out this test, you need to, first of all, as a government, put in place facilities that aid these people to carry out these tests. Meaning, if we are to go out and tell people you need to do screening for a sickle cell, there must be a machine that runs a sickle cell, HB electrophoresis in the hospitals free of charge, so that someone at the grassroots level, deep in the village, comes in from the village and enters the hospital sure that he's not going to pay any penny, but have this test carried out and his or her doubt ruled out. And then I'm also looking at creating awareness without the facilities, and creating awareness when these people are economically down and they cannot afford the test. So the suggestion I can put is before government maybe goes out to sensitize these people, the primary thing we can do is make sure that these facilities are equipped with the necessary machines or equipment that are needed for people to get these tests done. But if they are not there, we'll keep doing sensitization, and yet these people come to the hospitals, we tell them you have to test for sickle cell disease. When they come to our hospital, they're in the wards. These people come from the village with maybe, let me say, 20,000, and you tell them the test is 78,000 or 68,000, let me say. And now from there, what do they take up? You end up finding that they even end up not doing the test, yet very well the doctor is already, has maybe made his or her impression and has concluded somehow that this might be sickle cell, and yet there is no conclusion based on diagnosis. So we need to make sensitization, yes, but also make sure that we push, we carry out moves that encourage the government. If they cannot put these machines in grassroots facilities like health center force, at least we have hospitals and regional referral hospitals. I think it is not difficult for the government to put one machine in all the regional referral hospitals in Uganda. It doesn't cost much compared to putting them in all the facilities, even those of the lower levels like health center force and all that. When a machine is put like at a hospital, I understand people can come from Nebi and come and carry out their HB electrophoresis. So long as these machines are there and all the reagents needed for them to run are in place. Just like right now, I'm happy you find that there are some tests that are already in place, like you find people used to suffer with tests like liver function test, renal function test, and CBC. You find that people are coming from the village. They cannot afford money for just 15,000 to carry out CBC. And that is a very important test when you're going to talk about sickle cell. You first have to start with the CBC as a doctor to find out what is the HB level of this person. How does this person present? Is the anemia too down? What is causing the anemia? You find out. When the cause of the anemia is not clear, now you can proceed and do a HB electrophoresis. So from there, you find that people even don't have 15,000, most times you go to a hospital, 15,000 to carry out a CBC, and that is where they need to start from. So you now expect them to go ahead and carry out a test of 68,000. So my suggestion is all about sensitization. We who are already aware, as a health worker, I want to put this upon myself. It costs me nothing to go out and tell people that there is sickle cell disease, because I see the pain that these children go through, just because the parents, maybe some of them didn't know and some of them knew and valued money more than life. So I can take an initiative of telling a few people here and there of what they're supposed to do in regard to sickle cell disease. But also, a media house like this, my assertion to you people is also, as such things are there in place, I understand that you people play a very big role. Media is a very big, actually, part of sensitization.
Yes.
It is actually the major thing almost everyone uses to sensitize. When you are supposed to talk about something, you're supposed to go on media. We're supposed to, if we don't come here, we go on social media, talk about it maybe on Facebook, on YouTube, and other media. So you people here can also play a role of letting people know. Sickle cell, I know you might not go deeper by telling them how this occurs, but you can talk about actually reminding them, go ahead and carry out tests, do this and do that. Don't forget to carry out a sickle cell test and the importance of these tests, and then the effects when not done, what does it cause.
Okay.
So that is my suggestion concerning that.
Thank you so much, Cosmas, for vividly painting out how the effort being done by the government and the different NGOs and individuals out there, and your suggestion to the government and the different people wanting to create awareness about this disease and reduce the percentage of people affected by this disease. Thank you so much. If you have just joined this discussion, we have had a very extensive discussion on sickle cell disease, the myth and the facts surrounding this disease, together with our guests from Lancet Laboratories Arua. Thank you so much. Dero, I see you. Sami, I see you. Each and everyone who is catching this show and all this. So there are people who are watching, actually people who have this disease, and people who have children, maybe relatives who have this disease, and maybe they will want to go and test somewhere. You can let us know where your laboratory is located, so in any case they want to do the test.
Yeah, thank you very much for that opportunity. Lancet Laboratories is actually countrywide. For viewers who are watching us all over the country, we have our laboratories all over the country in these major cities, and here in Arua we are located in Star Plaza, that is just adjacent to DFCU Bank, OB Plaza. That's where you can find us. We are facing Arua Public Primary School playground. That is where you can find us here in Arua. Thank you.
Okay, any last words to our viewers out there?
My last submission to the viewers up there is, we need to really take this as a serious thing. We need to do tests. Let's go for tests with our partners. We know our status, whether we are carriers or we are sicklers. But I also call upon the government to really support the facilities with these devices for detecting sickle cell in the newborn, so that we really fight this disease out of the country, like doing with HIV. With HIV, like the vision of 2050, we should have zero HIV in Uganda. So we should also consider other complications like sickle cell, which is actually more deadly. So that's basically my submission. Thank you very much for
Okay, thank you. That is from Solomon. Thank you for that beautiful.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to first of all start by thanking Westnile TV for hosting us. This has been a very big privilege. I've always wanted to come out and at least tell people of what I know, at least share some knowledge. We've talked about sickle cell. I believe you've taken note of some things that you need to do. The primary one being carrying out tests for yourselves, couples, and also parents who are having children with unknown causes of anemia and some of those signs and symptoms we've talked about, and maybe you're struggling out there, you need to go ahead and carry out tests. And also to people who are having sickle cell, who are confirmed, and also the families. I want to extend this to you that you are great people, because by going ahead and finding out the cause or what your children are having, and finding how you can help them out with all the strength that you're giving in, we want to appreciate you so much. Do not give up on them. They are a people. They can come out and change something in the society. Let's not put stigma on them. Let's take them like normal people who are also battling with certain things. So that is all I can say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, dear viewer. Thank you, our guest. That has been it for today. We've discussed a lot about sickle cell, and if you know someone who does not have access to this information, please make sure to share. Sickle cell disease is hereditary. You cannot get it by getting into contact with someone. We have cleared a lot of myth and a lot of something. These people need a lot of support from the people suffering from this disease, their caretakers, and also we can support them financially, emotionally, psychologically. So they need a lot of support. And to our dearest government, I hope our government officials can extend this to the responsible people. But thank you so much for also sharing your views. Thank you for catching us today. See you again next Saturday from 8 to 10. Stay tuned for the next program. From me to you, have a very wonderful night.